Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Hi, I'm Greg.
I'm John. Hello.
And welcome to Oz by Drone.
Welcome, everybody. Great to see you again.
Okay, we're having a lot of fun today. Things aren't working out as they were meant to work out. Welcome to live streaming, but it is what it is.
This is what happens, you know, but we're getting by. We're getting a little better each time. Just back on air, everybody.
Yeah, so we did go off air. I'm going to briefly tell people what happened for those who may not have heard about it before. So, you know, we were doing our show and I was preparing for episode number 2 and I thought, okay, let's go and send a promo. This is what we're going to talk about in episode 2. And I forgot to press a button to take off the test pattern and to put my ugly face on the screen. So in a way, the world was blessed not seeing me a little bit more, but someone complained about the test pattern, and because of that complaint, YouTube said, oh, we're going to take away your right to stream. And it's been a real battle. They still haven't given us back the right to stream. I eventually created another channel. I had troubles even doing that because they didn't like my mobile phone number. They didn't want me to have too many channels. So this is my wife's channel now, so you can blame her if you don't like it.
You know, one of the things, Greg, I think about technology and getting it together, and everybody who is into flying drones will appreciate and know this. You have to have patience. Patience is good, and it's going to take you a while, whatever it is, with trying to adopt a certain technology. I think patience is really a virtue in this, and so, you know, then again, or you'll have another firmware update.
My daughter over there is going to press the button and turn it green again.
Go.
But it's okay. We've got a recording, so later on we're going to substitute any problems with this stream with the recording. So anyway, it is what it is.
You'll catch it later.
Okay, so let's get into it. So first of all, I'm Greg.
I'm John.
We are Oz by Drone, and you know, we're two guys who've known each other for many, many years, and we're here to talk about stuff that interests us. But let's get started now. So first things first, we're just going to talk about some news. We've already talked about what happened with the YouTube channel, but you know, what's been happening since the last stream for you, John? Anything interesting?
Yeah, some pretty good stuff's coming in. We're looking at sort of shaping a lot of our work towards survey more. We've been doing some survey. We've never been into a lot of aerial videography. That's not our bag. And we have been doing some security work in terms of testing drone detection technologies for companies. But I like the survey work. I think it's a great, there's so much of it really going to be out there for those that want to adopt it. So for Morrison Aerobotics, our latest news is we're tooling our aeroplanes up for better survey, and you can always find out more about that. Obviously, there's plenty of information on it to extend your survey capabilities, even with your basic Phantom 4 Pro is a great little tool for doing survey work. So that's on the cards for us now. Railway surveys, in fact, to be more specific. So that's with us.
Okay. And in my case, I haven't been doing so much, but I tell you what I am doing right now. I'm just having a look at the computer and looking to see if this is actually hitting anyone. We've got a green light over there, but I want to make sure, and humour me at the moment. John, this is where you get to do a tap dance in the background.
Hang on, I got music going. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, we got music. I'm not sure whether we'd be banned though from playing, even if I decided to think.
Oh, yeah, we can't put music up.
Well, while it's going, you know, let me tell you a little bit more. I'll fill you in a bit more on DJI news, because we're about to go to our next segment, which is going to be talking about registration. Just put in the DJI news. Those of you that are operating Phantom 4 Pros have noticed that the video reverses when you go to 90-degree camera down angles. So what? This is a bug that came in with the latest firmware. If you're not up to date, you won't know that the latest firmware is 01.03.500 or 0500, and that's been a new release for Phantom 4 Pro. It does have a bug. You can get the fix, which is the 501, which is a beta test only, by requesting it on the DJI forum. So just go straight to the DJI forum, tell them that you've got a camera reverse problem, reverse video problem. Don't panic. The patch fixes it and sorts that out. But it's a little bug where for whatever reason, the orientation of the gimbal through software tells the camera to reverse. And so you start getting inverted video for high camera down angles. We've noticed in survey with 90-degree down photographs that it just switches around 180 degrees. So that's a little bit of news for you, those with the Phantom 4 Pros. The Phantom 4 Advanced is okay. It runs on a different firmware and platform. You'll know that 11...
Still recording, and that's good. So I tested this so much last night, and it was perfect. And we get to today, and things being as they are,
not going out.
It's not going out. But look, let's do this. I'm going to get you to keep talking impromptu, but let me do this. I'm going to change the order of our topics, and maybe if we go to the topic of the agricultural stuff.
Yep.
Okay, and what I'll do, I'll play that out first, and while that's going out, it's still recording, and I'll go and fix the magic underneath. So let me press that button, and
yes, crop flying.
So John, I've got some video footage on the screen of it is a marketing video. I haven't got the audio there, but this is a particular product that you've been looking at recently. What can you tell me about that?
Well, we're very excited about it actually. Mostly what people are looking at there is the EB, which has been a very popular agricultural aircraft, and what it's got in it is the Parrot Sequoia. So the Sequoia is a multispectral camera. It's not the best you can buy, but at around $5,000 now, it is a very, very good camera. So Parrot decided to, with EB, pair a little foam aircraft up and work on a software, an autopilot. Does a beautiful job. It's very easy for a farmer just to type in, as you can see here, is to launch side or manage crops from the information. You can see there where the crop's either yielding more or less, or there's weed control. So it's as you can see, MicaSense is a camera that's available as well, and this little spectral camera and EB is a great product. Now what happened is that the Parrot decided to develop another airplane called the Parrot Disco, which some of our listeners might remember as being one of the most expensive pieces of foam that you could possibly buy at $2,100, and it was laughed pretty much out of the market. I didn't even bother with it because we could build something together for about $150 that would do what it would do. What was really not looked at was that the airframe was very, very good. It flew beautifully. Now what we've seen is the Parrot Disco aircraft drop down to $1,200. And then we saw Parrot decide to marry their camera into the Sequoia camera into the Parrot Disco. So that was interesting. And then they decided, well, we're going to sell that for $25,000 like an EB. But roll forward a little further and the Parrot Disco drops to $500, which it is at the moment. Incredible. Great airframe, good little motor, 45-minute flight time. Everything going for it that we like an airplane. Now, if you do the numbers, we think $500 plus a $5,000 Sequoia camera is $5,500. A lot better than 25 grand. So now we've got a flood of people snapping up the Parrot Disco, and we have just bought 3. Our stitching people in Cairns have just bought 2. I know of other operators that are buying them by the small truckload at the moment. They are a good airplane at $500. They're an absolute bargain. You can get them from Kogan, JB Hi-Fi. It's actually an out-of-the-box airplane that you can fly very autonomously. So it's got ticks all the boxes. Now we flew it the first time this week with a Mackie at Survey 3 camera in it. We're working on developing better flight planning software for it. So going back to our segment about agricultural work, whereas this was pretty much exclusively a rich man's sport, if you like, or a farmer who spends nothing of spending $500,000 on a tractor, will think $25,000 for what the aircraft survey will give him. Now we've got the price point where we're looking for $5,000 or $6,000, and I might say that when you're costing out agricultural work, you only need to do 1 or 2 jobs to pay for your infrastructure, your aeroplane. So that's in a nutshell what it is. Way too short a time on a show to tell you how it's going to be done, but there is plenty of information on internet on this, and be prepared to study it, and be prepared to get engaged in a third-party company that's going to take your data and analyse it properly so that the farmer can work with it. Remember, farmers these days aren't just guys that ride around on a horse or a motorbike and throw hay bales, although they still do that. Today's farmers are very tech savvy and jump into this kind of technology quite easily and understand it well. So the modern farmer has all the latest gadgets. So anyway, that's a little look into agriculture. And if you have any questions, you can always come through our show here and make a comment to get in touch about more information about agricultural flying.
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting part of the industry that as time goes, it will continue to develop, and certainly there's a lot of benefits. Speaking about getting in touch with us, so our YouTube channel, if you're watching this, you're not watching it live because it's not going out, but we're going to continue to do the show without any comments from you guys, unfortunately, today. But like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll get the stuff sorted out. We've also got Twitter, so you can reach us via Twitter now as well. And just to have the trifecta, you can also find us on Facebook. So yeah, we don't have any comments today. We'll still continue to record. I don't know what's happening with YouTube. They really don't like me. But let's move on to our next topic.
Yep.
So drone ID and drone registration. So it's an interesting discussion point. Now, at the end of the day, why do people want to do this? They want to do this because if you own an airport or perhaps a security facility of some sort, you want to stop the bad guys doing stuff. Now, as you can see on this picture on the screen, someone's listening in. And that's ultimately what happens about the technology. Someone's listening in to what your drone is saying. Every minute that you're flying, your drone is talking back to your controller. The interesting thing is that other people say, well, yeah, we want to listen into this as well. So recently DJI came up with the idea that they're going to send the pilot, and that's also going to be on the second photo that we've got coming up on the example of the DJI Aeroscope product. So they sell this commercially, and airports and similar security installations are buying this at the moment, and they think it's the best thing since sliced cheese or bread, whatever you want to say. But here's where it gets interesting. So if you're driving a car, you've got a license plate, and your license plate is something that's unchangeable, or is it? Okay, so the whole thing about the way DJI are doing this stuff, it's not a physical thing like a license plate. It's something that you can change if you know how to do it. So someone who might have, to use the old expression, a rootkitted phone or a jailbroken phone, well, the same thing goes with aircraft. So if you've got the keys to the aircraft, there's nothing to stop you from saying you are Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister of Australia, flying an aircraft above. But this is where someone's actually flown with a real DJI aircraft, and Flight Radar 24. So that's technology from DJI, and said, hey, we can undisposable. They're only throw it on the ground, leave it there. Instantly, it's going and drawing pictures on the screen. If you drop that near a lot of money on this. It's an interesting.
It is really, you know, and always possible, and always. Now, just quickly going back, originally we had primary radar after the Second World War, which a radar would sweep the sky, and if you were in the sky and you sent a return back, they could see you and help control you. We moved to secondary surveillance radar, SSR, which meant we had a little transmitter on the airplane, and when the radar interrogated you, it sent back a little symbol and said, here I am, I can't tell you how high I am, but here I am. Then we had mode C, SSR, rolling forward quickly, which sent the altitude back as a digital signal. Move forward to AEDST. What we've done now, the latest mode S, if you like, of interrogation, and that's what it's called, sends back the GPS signal, the aircraft registration, the height. You can send all sorts of data over mode S. Now, here's the thing. If we are going to move forward in this industry, we are going to be operating in the airspace system. Imagine if pilots decided, oh, let's just rootkit our airplane and send other types of information. There's absolutely no point. The idea of managing an airspace system and having everything on it means that we can move forward. The industry can move forward, and even if it's recreational users, we believe one day now with a simple thing of like a wristwatch, you'll have a mode S transponder, and when you're flying a paraglider, anything bigger than a box kite, you'll have a mode S transponder on it. Other aircraft, we've got license plates on the car. There's a responsibility with that.
Can I just say that, John? Like the ADSB is something that is broadcasting information. Now, how do you know where that information actually came from?
Well, it's coming from the aircraft at the moment. So you're transmitting from the aircraft itself, the position, and also it has a key on it now that you can opt on the DJI Go 4 app to put your name and your telephone number on it.
Yeah, but let's go back to ADSB for just a second, right? So if you were a bad guy and there's an aircraft in the sky and you were a bad guy and you wanted to draw a picture like the one we saw before.
Absolutely. Here's the thing though, Greg, and this is, if we would talk about manned aircraft right away, and let's say if you're a bad guy. Now, most people say, wait a minute, are there any bad guys that fly airplanes? I mean, in aviation, are there actually people that do? And the truth is there are, but they're very small. Well, in this world, UAV world, drone world, we assume that everybody that's got a drone wants to do the wrong thing. And it's just not correct. It's not correct.
It's true.
And we do ourselves a great disservice. Now, I know we're throwing it back and forth the debate here a little, and I'm almost disagreeing with you. But let's go to your point. A bad guy can do whatever he wants, anytime he wants. A bad guy can take a manned aircraft and kill thousands and thousands of people with it.
Yep. But let's say it's not someone actually in an aircraft, right? So there's someone on the ground.
Yep.
And he is able to go and inject the position of hundreds of aircraft. There's nothing to stop someone from doing that. Or even if they do have an aircraft in the air, right? So there's nothing to stop them from having a secondary transmitter and injecting that kind of stuff.
But here's the thing, that's not the most dangerous thing, and I'll tell you why. Why then, a bad guy, if it can inject aircraft symbols onto the AEDST system, a person with the technology can say, oh, let's put a 747 flying in an AEDST transmitter, let's inject it into the system and have a spurious aircraft. Well, there are security measures for that, but it can be done. But here's the worst one. When we mandated that drone pilots, commercial drone pilots, must have a radio to operate near an airport, all of a sudden we've got 5,000 new VHF radios in people's houses that kids pick up. Now, you pick up a VHF radio, a simple $300 radio, and go and park within an airport and next to an airport. You'll get caught, but you can cause some serious dangerous havoc by interfering on a domestic VHF aircraft channel. It's not locked. There is no security on VHF radios that manage and control aircraft in our airspace. Let me tell you, there's holes everywhere. But I come back to that. Who is going to do that? Would you suggest that? And let's take a 15-year-old sees dad's VHF. Let's go and have some fun and control an aircraft. ride his bike down to the airport and then say Qantas QF26 go round at the last minute. And that aircraft, that 747 is going to actually throw and go round. And so, you know, and aviation, and you're talking about putting a signature on a UAV. Let's integrate ourselves in the airspace.
Hey, I talk about the manufacturing community, from the mistakes that were made in the designs in how these aircraft systems work in manned aviation space, right?
Well, we're not going to leave it to DJI. You know, they're not necessarily the best software people in the paddock, you know, and we know that. They build nice hardware. Everyone agrees they love the hardware. It's not going to be them. They are, I suppose, positioning themselves because of their market as being a bit of a leader on you know, restricting operations and tying in operations. But in the end, it's not going to be them that does this. You know, they're going to be shared with responsibility and a way of being AEDST capable. I had a meeting with the head of airspace management and traffic management in Australia at Air Services, and we talked about the problem that if all of the UAVs and drones had AEDST, our system couldn't cope. So what
Correct.
Rolling forward now, what we're going to do is there's going to be a new airspace system brought in that will allow flexibility to low-level traffic. Now, your listeners are going to love this. They can look it up. What they're going to do is below 5,000 feet, which is quite high, we're going to have a common traffic advisory frequency. We're going to move away from the Class E and flight information region frequencies, and everyone below 5,000 feet will manage themselves on a talk-to-talk basis in a common traffic advisory. Now, this has a huge implication for manned aircraft, and what they've kind of, most of the, if you like, commuter Rex aircraft type size airplane subs have TCAS where they can see other targets in the sky anyway, but it's pointless to have someone in Brisbane or Melbourne managing that airspace, and they can be advisory, but it's up to the pilots for separation. So we're looking to a new system just around the corner, and I might say there's AAUS is having a great conference called ARPAS in Australian Skies, which is going to look at all this in Canberra. Check it out on the internet. That's called ARPAS in Australian Skies, and you and I are both going to that conference, Greg, and we will see both the ATM air surfaces and CASA talking about the new system and the way they're going to manage it. And so that will open up things for our technology and those for hobbyists as well. There'll still be firm rules around what you can do, and that makes sense. But what this will do, and this is the big one, for commercial operators, that we can see beyond visual line of sight in our sites, if you'll pardon the pun. And that's big. That's big for us, you know? Yeah.
Look, I'm looking forward to that too. I mean, there's so much, if you're out of a populated area and you want to actually do some beautiful cinematography of the environment, etc., I'm looking forward to that kind of thing.
Well, the reality is, and they know this, Catherine and Evans know this because they look at YouTube and they see it. Everybody flies beyond visual line of sight, all right? Everybody has a moment when they cannot see the aircraft. I'm going to go out, I'm going to say it, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to say that that's what happened, and they're not stupid. They know that, and so they're wanting people to do it safely, and there's no safe system at the moment to do it. So what do we do? Do we either reduce the radio signal down so that you can only fly 500 meters? DJI doesn't want that. They want to be able to say we can fly 7 kilometers. And when you advertise a product that will fly 7 kilometres, even if it only goes 2, let me tell you, after 500 metres, you can't see it. You can see the airspace around it, and you might be able to manage that in terms of traffic. But let's face it, it's just happening. It's happening and it's not going to stop. So we need to have a system in place to do it. And coming back to our topic, which is registration, that is a step forward, good or bad, leaving the bad stuff and the jailbreaking aside, which we're going to talk about also. Leaving that aside is a step forward. And any step forward where our regulator will say, yep, we're not going to make you law breaking.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. On a positive note, we are actually streaming live now. On a negative note, on a negative note, people who were potentially waiting to watch the show before have all gone away, and we've only got one person there.
Oh, one person. And hello to everybody watching the
replay.
Oh, yes. Good to have you.
So let me just go back to this, right? So the whole thing about drone ID and registration, all of this, right? If we take a step back from aircraft and we have a look at computers, there's something that's been around there for a long time. It's called AAA, and one of the famous ones implemented was TACAX, for example, implemented by Cisco. And Cisco have actually got some really brilliant design documents where authentication.
Yes.
Right? So how do we know you are who you say you are? So the first thing you need, instead of, in the case of AEDST, we're just going to give you a number. That's who we are. It works, but it only works if you trust the source of who that is.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to say, well, let's use public key cryptography, and you load a certificate on your drone that's issued by NASA or the vendor. That'd be a really good. Once you know who you are, then building an potentially go direct to CASA.
Complicated, not necessarily complicated, but chasing a way of tying it down. I think that the way this is going to work, Greg, is that they're going to mandate that something is there, and then the computer world and industry is going to obviously offer us more and more types of security that can be integrated into that idea. We're not at the stage yet where we've decided this is what has to happen. Let's not worry about how it happens, but this is the way it should happen. And I think once we do that, but you believe there's always going to be the loopholes there. I firmly believe that, and I don't really know myself how that's going to play out. And again, we're coming down to what are the bad guys going to do.
Yeah. So there's one thing that we have to realise beyond all of this, right? So. By the way, I'm just going to quickly talk to my little producer over there in front of me. Can you go to the mixing dashboard, the audio on the far right hand, and turn the volume up for John?
Thank you.
A little bit? I had a comment from someone who is saying he's a little bit low. That's fine. That'll be fine. And speaking of comments, everything that could possibly go wrong today is and has and will, right? So
I'm here. It's a lovely day.
Yeah, okay. So, by the way, let's just quickly talk about that. John was going to be somewhere where he could be in a closed environment. As it turned out, he's on the road, literally.
I'm on the road. I'm in a closed environment, but I'm in my car, which I'm comfortable on. Oh, look, we've got a chat line up there.
That's a chat message. And here's the interesting thing. I've got this lovely piece of software that's meant to do some great things for me, right? So it's a test version, and with a view to buying it and paying for it. But the only message that it's got is mine. I had a look at the native YouTube stuff that was over here. Here we go. I think I can press a button and get this thing over there and press that doohickey, and
I think I've heard this before, you know.
The doohickey thing?
You know, people won't, well, so they know how long you and I have been friends. We had bulletin boards together. Well, you set up my first bulletin board. Syncopation, all those years ago, before the World Wide Web, when we were using BBSs to send mail packets to each other at 2400 baud. There you go. And if you're old enough to remember that, then probably sitting with a coffee and a paper in your slippers.
So someone else who's driving at the moment. So hi Ken. Lovely to yeah.
There we go. Hey Ken. Good on you, mate.
And we've got someone else, Dave Oliver, and we'll have his little chat come up in a moment. There we go.
There's Dave. Good to see you guys on the stream. Thanks, Dave. Welcome.
Yeah. So we're going to get to our next topic in just a second. In fact, we were going to have a section where we were chatting, but as you can see, we don't have a great number of people here at the moment, so maybe they're important people. Yeah.
Yes.
But what I will say is this whole process of streaming, the complexity involved in it, and you know, there's someone that I watch quite frequently. Ken, who spoke to us on the chat just a few minutes ago, and I got a lot of respect for what Ken does, but I know his hair wasn't as grey as it is now. Since he started trying to work all this stuff out, and I used to have a full head of hair. I promise I did.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, I'll leave it at that for the moment. We're going to go on to our next topic. We'll skip the chat today. What topic are we going to do next? So we've done news, we've done drone ID. We're going to do the topic of...
I'm waiting. Jailbreak.
So this is an interesting one. You can see this video here.
Who's that? Who's that handsome man? And we're done. Very clever. Watching my airplane
mission.
shoot off here.
And I'm in the car. I'm taking my transmitter iPad. And I'm leaving the scene. Goodbye.
I'm off.
Yeah. John can't hear the audio from the video from where he is, unfortunately, but basically the thing that John is trying to do, and this goes back to the whole thing of drone registration, is how could you, if you were a bad guy, not saying that John is, but he's doing a test, and it's a little bit theatrical here. He's not really walking away and going into his car.
No.
No, because he's maintaining visual line of sight and he's the pilot in command of the aircraft, but for entertainment purposes and theoretical purposes, John's pre-programmed a flight mission into the aircraft. And what makes this even more interesting, it's not just a flight mission, but it's carrying a payload underneath which is going to be released. Now, we can only surmise, John, that in the topic that we said, jailbreak. Do you want to tell me about what you're trying to test for?
Well, we're going to be dropping packages into secure areas. I'm talking about prisons and so forth, and we're demonstrating that. And what the companies that have asked us to do this are looking at drone detection technologies. So they want to see, here goes the package now, they want to see if they can, first of all, track the aircraft. Secondly, find out who the operator was. They just want to see the extent of their technology. So they're going to have a look at DJI's Aeroscope, which will look at a DJI aircraft. So we'll fly these missions with a DJI aircraft, and then we'll fly with non-DJI aircraft, and they'll see that they're invisible. Obviously, a jailbroken aircraft, and this goes back to our registration again, won't be traceable. I don't believe the Mavic is seen by the Aeroscope system at the moment as well. And so, and also anything outside of that. If you want to be silent with an aircraft and you want to drop something, the way to do it, of course, is to do it nice with no lights and no transmission at all. So you plug your Flamewheel 450 into the computer, upload the flight plan, which has got the release in it and everything else, and then basically have a 5-second delay, unplug the umbilical, and off the airplane goes. Now, that is completely silent, so there's no transmitter or receiver on the aircraft at all. All it is doing is receiving GPS passively, and it's off to do, and it'll fly. If you've got the batteries, it'll do a very sophisticated mission under an RG pilot, autopilot, completely unseen. So, there you go. If you that type of jailbreaking is just basically a kit aircraft that you can build, and it can be done to be quite invisible. So we're looking at a range of technologies where the aircraft can be detected, right down to basically primary radar.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, right, so in what you've done there, you've disabled the transmitter from the ground.
Yes.
Good. The aircraft up above is still receiving and potentially pinging information out.
That's
now,
correct.
If you wanted, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, someone who has rootkitted their aircraft and taken control of the software, there's nothing that's stopping them from turning that off.
Absolutely. Yep, no problem at all. That's an easy one to do, to basically turn the transmitter off. And it's very, looking at the software, it goes to the section where you select lost connection mission completion. So you usually have an agreement there that you're about to send the airplane off on a mission where if connection is lost, the aircraft will complete the mission. And so basically you do a lost connection at the same time a triple transmitter off as well, which is pretty easy to do. No problem at all. It's just a software.
Yeah, yeah. So as you said though, so let's just quickly rewind. All of the detection stuff that we talked about before, right, with the license plate, works really well for DJI aircraft. But someone who goes and builds their own piece of infrastructure with their own full control of the software, there's nothing to stop them whatsoever from completing their mission without doing it dark, doing it totally undetected.
Yep, that's correct. So one of the things that the security companies are looking at, and I know our friend, our other friend Ken, who is very involved in this side of things, might agree with me here. They've talked about what level of sophistication you need to have to pull some of this stuff off. Is a person able to go down to one of the department stores, buy a Phantom 4 Pro, pull off an autonomous mission, have a dropping device on there and have it do the job? They are. There's no question about that. They'll be able to do that, but it's going to take them a little while. They're going to have to get it right. They're going to make a few mistakes. A person who can build their own quad is much likely to get there and be able to do that kind of thing, building a kit. But again, that's not something a 15-year-old, because we're doing it in high schools these days, showing people how to build their own flame wheels and quads and program and put them together to quite sophisticated levels. It's just a matter of time and someone who wants to do it. And that comes back to it. Someone who wants to do the wrong thing, who decides they're going to persevere with that, will do it. Now, coming back to a quick point about jailbreaking on a deeper level, on the rootkit level, and you'll and some of your astute listeners will know this. Once you're going to start rootkitting an aircraft, you're in another league of, if you like, technology entirely. So this is not the person who goes down and tries to fly their drone into a secure space and buys it in a department store. This is a person with a real good skills in computing and reverse engineering, and they are a group of people with unique and remarkable skills that can reverse engineer software, and they're good at it. And I might quite openly say here, you ain't going to stop them from anything. That's it, just a blanket. That's it. They will have and jailbreaking your own aircraft. That level, you know exactly
level. And yes. Speaking of which, just to quickly talk about that, and I'll put it up as a chat comment in a couple of moments, but if you're interested in the jailbreaking scene, there's a website that you can have a look at, a button or two.
Bit of cat and mouse with the manufacturers, of course. It's always going to happen.
Jailbreaking, right? That's a fact. They're battling against it. And this is the website, dji.retroroms.net. If you go to that website, you can have a look at a lot of information that's been gathered about how to break into your aircraft and take control of the software.
I must make a correction there too, Greg, in that I mentioned another Ken, but it's actually a Kevin. It's a mutual friend of ours, isn't it? And he'll know who he is there. And you'll find Kevin on that site too. Very, very astute and knowledgeable about how it goes, and a lot about the jailbreak industry as well, which he speaks on regularly, quite publicly.
Yeah, if you're interested, do a bit of a search on YouTube, searching for Kevin Finisterre, or he's also known as Hostile. That's his nickname, because he certainly is, from the perspective of a manufacturer, a little bit hostile. But we'll talk about that next week. I'm hoping to have the whole jailbreaking thing as a topic for next week.
Yes, his foray into jailbreaking will be the subject of a fantastic movie one day, and so you can probably ask him about that. But you can certainly read about it, look at some of the presentations. But yeah, he's at the forefront of this technology with his company, Department 13.
Yeah. Let me just press that button again. There we go. Interesting comment from Dave, and it's absolutely true. Back in the 80s, he used to tell people, if you can control the system, it doesn't matter what security that they put into the software, you could hack it. And it's absolutely true. Yep. Even to this day, everyone thought that the iPhone jailbreaking scene was dead, but it's not. Right, so they keep securing it more and more. There'll always be something more. And just before we go off this topic, right, so someone who is you know, we talk about the AAA thing that we mentioned before. So even if you got a certificate so that you can't spoof it anymore, and you've got some other good systems in there, if you've got root access to the aircraft, you can just turn it off and go dark. So that's all there needs to be said, and there's nothing that can be done to prevent that. It's
nothing at all.
Yeah.
They remember that they built this software on the platform on a lot of OpenGL product, and it was never intended to be secure. DJI never imagined they would need to secure their aircraft from the jailbreaking scene. And then, of course, one of the first companies from Russia, CopterSafe, which exploited that, made a lot of money out of it by offering, software packages that you could modify your aircraft with. And, I think it was about $500 for a Phantom. You can make it fly faster, you can fly it in no-fly zones, you can make it fly higher, all those things. And people were quite happy to pay $500 to just have a small patch. So, it was economically driven as well. But I think it caught DJI and some of the manufacturers by surprise, because they never saw that coming.
Yeah, well, they're like we said before, they're a good hardware manufacturer, but when it comes to software,
not their game. Definitely not their game.
Okay, so let's talk about our last topic. So we're going to talk about how to fly over water, and we haven't planned or scripted anything for this, but the video that you're watching right now is the one that we use for our intro, and it the video itself is shot from a river that's behind where I live. Beautiful, beautiful area. Unfortunately, it's stuttering a bit and high CPU, and again, the technology you would be totally familiar with this, fun and games. I hope it's going out to YouTube okay, but it's looking a little bit stuttery on the screen. But anyway, aside from that, so I live next to a river, John lives on a river. We wanted to talk about some tips and tricks of how to fly safe when you're flying over water. So let's start. What is your number one tip? Your opinion, John?
The number one tip for flying on water is to pre-plan our alternate landing sites. So what we do is if we're doing a shot like this, we're looking at a boat coming, I have my home point, which might be on the shore safely somewhere, nice and secure, but I'll have a second or third place within, close to me, where I can go if I needed to. If anything should go wrong, I need to be able to land the aircraft quickly. Now, if you were flying over land here, of course, you could just land the aircraft on the ground and go and retrieve it from wherever it was, provided you're in a nice open area, and of course you wouldn't be in an urban area. The attraction to fly over water, of course, is that it ticks a lot of boxes. We're not on a populous area. We can maintain our 30-metre rule from people. Very, very good in terms of risk and of course visibility. If you're flying from the shoreline and you have flying over water, you have a flat, level ground, no trees in the way, you have good reception, you get your longest transmission distances. And so flying over water has a lot of attractions, but it can tempt you to fly too far. And when it does that, you'll get caught. And you'll get caught because over the water, you'll get wind come up. And so this is one of the first traps that I wanted to talk about today is understanding and reading the wind in overwater flights. Know exactly if you're flying downwind and a sea breeze comes in, you can get caught, and you will get caught. So
to put that another way, if you're going that way and you take off and you make an assumption that what happens if the wind is a tailwind by the time you want to come back, where are you going to land? So that's the very first question you would ask yourself.
Yeah, in 3D robotics, there's flight planning software that manages this, and it's called rally points. And DJI aircraft don't have this, but we only have a one return to home position. But if you're flying a solo or any other 3D robotics, you can nominate rally points, and you can put 5 or 6 in there. Now what happens is if the aircraft senses that its battery level is low or it's got a fault, a DJI aircraft struggles to get home. A 3D robotics aircraft won't do that. It'll go to the nearest rally point and land. And it'll do it without, in a lost connection situation, it'll do it. But of course, if you lose connection or you have another problem, if it senses that it can come home, it will. It'll come to the closest rally point to you. What a fantastic thing that is for overwater flying. And I think I talked to you about that when we were talking about some initial overwater flying, that you have a particular alternate site. You need at least one, and perhaps two, even better, and have one out towards where you're operating if you're operating out at extended ranges at the limit of your site too. And that's pretty much it. Flying low over water is the one I'd come to next, but the first one is rally points and wind, and understanding. I think the wind is a pretty much self-explanatory one for those that have got caught flying downwind.
And certainly using some apps, there are some really good ones that can have local wind forecasts with a great degree of accuracy. There's one I've got on my phone, and I can't remember the name of it right now.
The forecast is a popular one.
That's the one.
A lot of guys use that. It's very quick. Gives you everything. Gives you satellite count. You can expect everything else. But what local knowledge is always going to be the best. So you and I fly over water at our home bases, and we know from local knowledge. Just remember, quick tip, folks. If you when you take off, any flight that you're going to go any distance, you want to have the wind on your face. As the airplane leaves, if the wind is on your face, you can fly safely away and pretty much be sure you can return, provided the aircraft keeps its GPS position and you manage to look at your battery levels all the time.
Yeah, so just looking at this app today, and I'm going to jump up and see if I can do that.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, it's out of focus. That doesn't matter.
Colour picture.
Yeah, it's a lovely colour picture.
OV forecast, perhaps one of the other users kindly put the app in the comments section.
Yeah, UAV forecast, but the interesting thing is it tells you not good to fly right now. It's making a recommendation to you, which is really helpful. You don't have to be a, what do they call the weather people? What's the ologist? Meteorologist, that's the one. You don't have to be a meteorologist, but you can certainly get a good recommendation based on some standard patterns there. So, 1, landing point. 2, fly into the wind.
Yep. Third one is easy. Third one is low flying. Now, the temptation to fly low over water is fraught with danger. First of all, visibility, and if you're in a manned aircraft and you're flying low over water, seaplane pilots will tell you this, the depth perception is very, very difficult if the water is smooth. And if you're looking into a camera, FPV camera, you will make a mistake, and the water will seem to jump up at you and grab the airplane at the last minute, and you'll say, what happened? Putting my meteorologist shoes on again, let me tell you what actually happens and why the altimeter is not accurate enough. If you've got sonic, down-looking ground sensing, as the Phantom does, you'll have a little bit of help saving that. But if you're flying fast over water, and the barometric altimetry can easily change over the water, quite easily. It changes with the temperature of the water, so you might fly over a tidal area where the current is colder or warmer, and that will actually reflect in the air above you and change the altimeter in terms of the density of the air. Now, and the pressure of the air, which is actually reading. So when you fly fast from standing still, you'll notice if your aircraft descends, that's because a low pressure area is created around the aircraft. The altimeter senses that the aircraft's climbing. It thinks low pressure, I'm going higher, so it drops the altitude down. So we have often people flying into the ground where they're just at 1 or 2 meters and they hit full forward stick and tear off like crazy, and then the aircraft starts descending. You have to know what's actually the sensors are doing in that point to know to do that safely. But the other trick, of course, is you'll get caught with boats and masts and so forth. So be sensible with your altitude management when you're flying over water. Temptations to fly low over water and scoot across the waves, but there are those that have not tried it yet, and those that have got wet airplanes. Yeah.
So we've just had Dave commenting a handheld anemometer is good to have as well.
That's one of our kit. We always use it because we log the wind at takeoff. It's on one of our pre-flight checks. Hand anemometer, you'll buy it on eBay for $38. It's got a 9-volt battery in it. You'll spend more on batteries, but it's a very, very handy device. Thanks, Dave. And all our guys use anemometers. And what's good for, and if I might add this, is that every time you put an anemometer up into the wind, your body is sensing the wind strength, and you say, oh, look, that's a 7-knot wind I can feel. Oh, there's a 15-knot wind I can feel. There's 20. And every time you get better at it. So what we do now when we're training people is we have them stand facing the wind and we say, guess what the wind strength is? And they have a guess, then we hold the anemometer up and they go, oh, I felt stronger than that, or it didn't feel as strong as that. But you'll get better at judging, but no matter how good you get, the anemometer is required so that you can record the wind strength on departure, and it just basically goes into the log.
There's also some really good tables that I found ages ago that talk about the different types of waves and chop, and there's some categories, and you know, we won't go into it today, but do look that up on Wikipedia, and it's a force 1, force 2, all of these different things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Important to have those, the Beaufort scale.
That's the one.
Now, if you're into any kind of boating, you'll be quite familiar and have a good weather eye as well. Lots of experience in boats usually makes for a good pilot as well in terms of assessing local weather. But you know, your weather eye should always be part of it, and the weather over water can be a little different. It can change quite quickly, and it seems to, whereas you don't get things like mechanical turbulence and other little things like that so much, the air's often quite smooth. There are plenty of traps, but you can do it safely and you can do it sensibly. Don't test fly your aircraft
over water.
Don't do that. Don't upgrade the firmware and say, this will be okay, I'll go to net. Do not do that. And I see people test fly their airplane in the backyard with firmware, so more crashes happen that way. Go to a nice open space. If you've just uploaded a new firmware, do your calibrations, calibrate your IMU, recalibrate your compass, do all of that, relink the RC remote, do a full bench check at home, and then go to an open space and fly the airplane. And there'll be a lot less tears. At 2,000, trust me.
Yeah, and one ground effect.
Yes, ground effect is an interesting one too. You'll only feel that at low level. Of course, ground effect is when, traditionally in a fixed wing aeroplane, once we descend to half the height of the wingspan, which is very low, you'll agree, the drag reduces on the aircraft. It's a pretty interesting thing when you're flying a heavy jet and you come down to the flare position, and the airplane, all of a sudden the drag reduces and the airplane wants to slip along, so we have spoilers and lift uppers to do it. Ground effect in a quadcopter is much more related to the helicopter if you're not moving forward at all, and remember the slightest bit of wind, and this is an interesting one you don't think about, the slightest bit of wind while you're in a hover, a low-level hover in a quadcopter, means you're flying forward. The aircraft is flying forward. When there's no wind, the aircraft is truly in a hover. So understand that although the airplane is stationary, the airspeed is such so that when you're flying into ground effect, know whether the downwash is going to create what we call a vortex ring. So in still wind, once you get close to the ground, the downwash from the aircraft, the props will rotate around and come into the props again, so all of a sudden the aircraft may descend. The slightest bit of wind means the vortex ring state won't exist, and it'll flow over the quad very well. So these are things you can look up. Not easy to explain just in a chat show, but if you like learning about the aeronautical side and the aerodynamic side of your aircraft, you'll certainly understand a lot more about what it's doing. Oh, and I just fell over. Oh, I'm here. Sorry.
You are here.
I'm here. There we go.
So.
I still look good? Yeah, I still look good. Sorry about that.
Face like a drop pie.
There you go, thank you.
Let's go on to a couple of other things. So what happens when your aircraft goes into the drink, right? We've talked about everything that we don't want to happen. Obviously, we're trying to prevent it, and you don't want to go to, you know, more than 50% battery is an obvious one, and all of those kind of things. We've just had a few other tips. But what happens if you do go into the drink?
Well, if you go into the drink and you don't have any kind of insurance or DJI care for that mistake, then just go home. Don't bother about going for a swim. Just leave it there. It looks like a crab when it's at the bottom of there, and look, some lucky crab will come up and perhaps do a crab dance and try.
Look, the reason I asked that question, and this is live, I haven't rehearsed this with John, but I wanted to share with people, this is a little piece of equipment that I've got on my aircraft called a getter back. this was originally invented for people who are fishermen and they're protecting their fishing line. So hypothetically, if your aircraft goes into the drink, this is going to automatically launch off a buoy that's going to come up to the top of the surface. It's not going to bring your aircraft up. It's only a very small attachment for your aircraft, but you'll find this little floaty bobbing around, and it's got a Kevlar line, and you can go and pull up your aircraft. And for $20, it's something that you get your aircraft back. Do you really want to fly it then? No, you don't want to fly it, but you do want to give that aircraft to DJI so that they can pay out on the insurance that you've got with your aircraft.
You won't get any insurance if you don't get the aircraft back, unless you can order these types of products. We've got insurance for total hull loss in that situation. But look, the device is useless. Once it's been submerged, there ain't much that you can do with it. You know, it doesn't even like rain, so certainly not going to like being submerged. I've seen people fit floats to their aircraft. That has limited possibility as well. I think we'll see perhaps, you know, the airbag situation when the airplane's coming down rather than the parachute. Perhaps we'll have airbags come up.
Probably not the ones that have currently been recalled in Australia.
Right. You know what? I prefer myself to fly the airplane carefully and make sure that I've taken all my other checks. Because truly, I don't want the airplane to come down anywhere where I'm flying, and I don't want it to. And so, you know, when it comes down to it, although you might get the airplane back a little easier once you're flying over land, and that's a great idea with a getter back to make sure you can get it back. Don't have it go down in the first place. Simple.
Yeah. Look. Anyway, that's all we got on flying over water. Now, at this point, we did have a really shaky start to today's show. Really shaky. So we don't have a great number of people. We had more people on our first broadcast, which it is what it is. And normally at this point, we'd reserve some time for chat where, you know, we're discussing topics of interest to you. If anyone wants to quickly put in a topic or a discussion point or a question, and Dave, feel free. I don't know if anyone else is out there at the moment, but if they are, feel free. And at the same time, we'll have a quick chat about what we're going to talk about next week. So I'm going to go to my website where I've got this. If my computer's going to play ball.
If it doesn't play ball for you, none of us have got any chance at all, Greg, I've got to say.
Yeah. Well, it's been challenging.
A nice little ad for Apple there, I can see. You know.
That wasn't deliberate. But Apple, if you want to send me a computer or any other equipment, I'd be more than happy to accept it.
Obviously clever of Apple. They had the foresight to say, well, you know, one day people are going to be looking at the computer. On the back of it, we may as well put our logo. Let's not just put a sticker on there. Let's
light it up.
Let's light it up and build it in there, you know.
Yeah, and my daughter's pointing to me like she wants the computer if Apple give us one for sponsorship, but that'd be amusing. So next week.
Hardware. I think their hardware is good, actually. I'm quite impressed with it.
Yeah, indeed. So let me just press. I had the wrong page up. Run sheet. So next week we plan to talk about the DJI hacking scene in a little bit more detail. So we mentioned briefly today that community. We're going to talk about that a bit more. We're going to talk about maintenance and what you need to do to keep your aircraft safe, particularly if you're a commercial flyer. Yep. We're going to have a look at a couple of places in Australia where we've got some beautiful footage we're going to share with you. We're going to have a look at modding your aircraft, some hardware mods for your aircraft. What can you do?
Got a nice few of those for those that like to pimp.
Yeah, and hopefully, all things being equal, we'll have the chat working again next week. Yep. And we'll have a few questions from the audience, a bit more than today.
Now, don't forget, if you're interested in the Parrot Disco at the moment, $500 buy quite it's a bargain price. Get you into a fix when you'll fly easily and enjoy. So just reach us through either Osby Drone or Morrison Aero Robotics, and perhaps if we get enough interest, Greg, I'll do a little bit of a review on that, a quick sweep by, and show everyone that aircraft a little closer and how you can do it.
Yeah, indeed. And just before we go, so I've just put the website in for the conference that we're going to in a few weeks' time.
Yep, that would be great. Get down there in Canberra 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, 13 and 14. Up as an Australian Skies. Lots of great speakers. Going to be specifically about airspace integration and the future of not just recreational aircraft, but also commercial aircraft beyond visual line of sight. It's going to be a major talking point, but a great way to get in touch with the industry and see where it's heading. And of course, if you of that conference. Indeed.
People from government in Australia. We've got people from aircraft manufacturers in Australia, JI there in particular. So, yep. You know, we get to meet them face to face.
You've got to prove to CASA that they can facilitate certain things. They're the ones that we actually need to say, yeah, okay, let's do this. Let's put it to CASA and see if they think it's safe. So, you know, we're not banging on CASA's door here. They do the best they can, what they can. Air services have got to look at what's in it for them to open up to UAS.
Yeah. Okay, look, that's all we got time for today. We've gone 5 minutes over out of the planned hour, but don't shoot us, it's okay. See you next time, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Osby Drone, great to be back on air. And, you know, we'll get better at this. And the more you tell us what you want to hear about, you want to talk about, that's what will be on. It's really your show. So we're happy to share with you what we can.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
See ya. Bye for now.